All right, we're going. Okay. Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 140. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me, as always, are my co-hosts, Ron Hamilton. Hello, Ron.
Aloha.
Aloha. And Zach Roberts.
Hello.
Hello. We got a great show for you this week, and we got a great guest for you coming on tonight. Before we get over to that, let's just throw Ron and Zach. Anything, guys, happen to you over the past week or so worth talking about?
No hurricanes this week, so I got nothing.
All right. Well,
I'm still chugging along on my book that I'm working on, and keep telling people that I'm working on. So that's about all I'm doing right now.
The Eternal Novel, of course.
Well, photo essay book.
The Eternal Photo Essay Book. All right. Yeah. We are currently bracing for the impact of thunderstorm. Oh, geez, I forgot the name of it.
Is it just a thunderstorm now? It's not even a tropical storm.
Tropical storm. I'm sorry, tropical storm.
Okay.
I just see TS. Tropical storm. I think it starts with a G. Gordon. Yeah, tropical storm Gordon should be making landfall here tomorrow night. So, wish me luck, all. It
doesn't seem all that threatening.
Well, it's coming right for.
It's
Biloxi.
Gordon. like if somebody said, "Oh crap, Gordon is coming to your house and kicking down the door," I'd be like, "Really, Gordon?"
They can't do any better.
I guess.
Names, right?
So you want to call it like Tropical Storm Destructor?
Trogdor, yes.
Trogdor.
Hordor.
Oh,
I want Tropical Storm Hordor. All right. Well, we got a great guest for you on tonight. Returning panelist for us, Mr. Dave Wells. Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Not bad. Not bad. What you been up to the last several months / year? I don't remember. It's been a while.
Well, I just got back from a month in India, but probably the biggest thing since we spoke is my business is now 100% video. I haven't actually done a still job in the better part of the year.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. So I think that's appropriate for our discussion. And I am actually, would have been fun to have started a little earlier because I hope we do get to the Ken Jareski article. Because is it Jareski or Jarecki? Does anybody know the proper pronunciation?
I think it's Jarecki.
Okay. I'd like to discuss that as a self-employed person, but we'll keep that for a little bit later. But I'm doing all right, thank you.
Yeah, well, we're going to discuss everything you guys want to discuss, to include the latest from Canon and their mirrorless. But we're going to make you wait for it. And we're going to put that at the end of the show. I did have a really exciting flange discussion planned for that portion, but I figured maybe a mirrorless camera from Nikon would warrant a bit more coverage, especially since this is the last episode before they officially unveil the camera. Of course, it's been already leaked in all its specs and all its glory on every single website, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, well, before we get into that, Dave, remind the folks exactly who you are and what you do.
I live in Providence, Rhode Island. I was a newspaper photographer for about 5 years. I spent about 20 years as a magazine photographer. In the last 5 years, I've been making the transition from still to motion. And for me, in the last year, it finally swung all the way over. And I actually love motion because, you got sound and you got movement, as well as the image, of course.
Right. And well, I think your storytelling capability is just through the roof,
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, basically, when I'm doing more and more workshops for still photographers who are transitioning to video, and the pitch is really simple. We already know how to put together a frame, which a lot of the people who are in the world of video don't know how to do, and that puts us at an extreme advantage. And building on that, so far, most people I've worked with had very good luck, and knock on wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have switched completely to video, so that's great to hear, I guess. I mean, or maybe bad to hear. I don't know. Is there any sort of love lost about the not shooting photos, and are you shooting all your video projects at 4K?
In the beginning, I was sort of wondering if there was going to be love lost, but there's just been so many different ways of telling a story. I mean, everybody who talks about video talks about sound. I think because I'm learning sound, it's still very exciting to me. And then editing, of course, in the old days, we were at the whim and control of some other editor. Now we do that as well, which is good in terms of control, bad in terms of time. But so far, no, so far win-win to me. I actually am not shooting 4K. I'm still doing everything 2K. I am using mirrorless cameras, so when we get to the mirrorless discussion at the end, I will obviously have plenty to throw into the mix as well.
Right.
So,
okay, great. Well, let's get started. We got a lot to talk about tonight. First thing is, I saw this story on the ColoradoIndependent.com about a police officer who arrested a reporter who was trying to film a gentleman that they were arresting, who apparently was not fully clothed, and the police officer said that she could not film him due to HIPAA laws and Privacy Act and whatever, and then proceeded to arrest her when she defied his order and continued to film. And so we have the whole thing on body cam, and, I'm not totally spun up on all the rules and laws and whatnot, but after reading the comments and doing a little bit of legwork myself, it's pretty evident that there was no HIPAA or Privacy Act violation taking place. The First Amendment precedes that. So what are you guys' thoughts on this? Is this par for the course now in the age we live, or is this sort of the exception to the rule?
Oh, I think it's a par for the course. And earlier there was a photo posted on the New York Times site where one of Trump's, I think it was Trump's advancement was blocking a camera. I mean, so yeah, that's what I was going for, the gesture. So obviously that's becoming a default. What I find interesting about the police is that I don't know, you kind of think that they would know that this stuff is going to get out, and so is there more of a culture within the community that says, well, we can keep trying it, or they're not seeing it, or what? That's the part that mystifies me.
They know they're being filmed. They know they're filming
right.
it. I think in their end, they think they're in the right. And really nothing will come out of this. This won't result in anyone getting in trouble or anything like that, at least from what I've read in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did they say? They said, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have used that rough language with you, but apart from that, they did nothing wrong.
Right. Yeah, they told her to act like a lady.
That
was another odd one. So,
and smile more. You're so much prettier when you smile.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. It's this. The fact that they know they're film. I mean, I remember there being the huge discussion about when body cams became like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and body cams became like all the police forces got funded out of millions and millions of dollars to put these body cams in, and we're like, oh well, it'll keep them more honest and it'll keep them more doing. And I continually said, no, it won't. They're the same number of people who watched any number of police shootings that happened, especially around like the Ferguson and Black Lives Matter kind of origin times. And watch these videos from other people and going, well, we don't know what happened 10 seconds before. We don't know what happened off camera. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason why what's on camera and what's just there is telling it. We've also seen a million times when they just happen to leave their hand on their chest over the camera, or the audio malfunctions. And also the problem is that there's actually no transparency requirements with this video. I know a number of Chicago journalists who have had to file lawsuits to try to get the Chicago Police Department to release video over time and time and time again, even though like a police-related shooting happened. It's just, but that's all. I mean, that's relatively beside the point. It's the fact that I don't know what needs to happen. I mean, the NPPA has long been providing and offering training to police forces. Mickey, the lawyer there, he is a very big friend of the police department. So it's not like they're not having training, or at least it's not offered out there. I mean, they can do what they want. When it comes to, following training and things like that. The problem is that what ends up happening is they know that they're not going to be held liable for whatever happens, is that there's a lawsuit, and then they get sued, but they don't personally get sued. The office gets sued, and then taxpayers pay the money. I mean, that's to me one of the biggest problems here, is that there's no personal responsibility within the police forces for when it happens. I mean, Shay Horse, I think he's been on our show before. He was one of the journalists who was arrested. Was it J20 or J21? I forget. It's J20. And like went through this ridiculous process and got like full body cavity searches twice, and while he was a journalist. And it's going to slowly a lawsuit's coming to head. It's taken 2 years now, and the cops aren't being held liable at all, and they're not admitting anything. But the city is settling with all these journalists, and like 20 or 30 different journalists and people who are illegally held and actually sometimes brutalized, but they're not paying for it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the theme for tonight's program is all about sort of attacks on journalism and journalists and photojournalists. Stopping them from doing their job. Which of course ties into the the story about the Trump volunteer who was at the rally who blocked a photojournalist's lens, which so famously blew up and went viral. And I see some similarities there. It's just with one, it's people in authority who feel that they're doing, I guess, a service or a disservice or a service. They're serving some end and cause to someone else, whether that be thinking that they're supporting the president or being that they're thinking they're supporting, whoever this person is, who's being arrested, and kind of extending sort of their power and control. What do you guys think of the recent, issues that came out from the Trump volunteer blocking the camera? I mean, do you think it was? I mean, well, I will say I think it was dealt with quickly and addressed. It would have been worse if nothing had been done. But what do you guys think of the overall story?
Well, I would be curious if I can. Ron, go ahead.
No, I was going to say as a Trump supporter, but never mind. I'll wait.
Where's Widener? Get Jeff Widener. Silence. Get Jeff Widener on here, Ron. Let's get his opinion. Well, Ron, what do you think of this situation?
No, like you said, I think it was dealt with. I think they did actually. I'm pretty pleased with the result on this one.
Right.
That they corrected the guy, said don't do that anymore. I think that's good news. I think that's one shining ray of light in an otherwise dark story we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the dark story in terms of I haven't heard directly from people I know, but the Boston Globe, there was a guy arrested in L.A. for threatening to attack the Globe, which forget about the geography, but he was obviously buying into the journalists as enemies of the people discussion, which I know you guys have visited a couple times, but I don't have enough working peers these days to say to people I know, and you guys may, have anybody encountered that particular thing directly in their work?
Anybody? It's probably Zach.
Yeah, just Zach.
I mean, thanks to Charlottesville, I have white supremacists come after me any number of times. Like, thankfully not physically. Those are usually police officers who come after me when I'm at protests. But I've gotten a surprising, actually, I since I talked to a lot of the people who were at Charlottesville, and I think that it comes down to, for me, it's I got my white male privilege that I don't get as many death threats as, say, my friend, a person who become friends with, who was one of the people who was attacked. She's not a journalist, but she's also trans. So like she just on a daily basis is just inundated. She posts about having a lunch and she gets threats underneath her Twitter feed and things like that. So it's not, that's unfortunately now, thanks to social media and everything like that, it's kind of become a norm because it's faceless. You can facelessly attack journalists under a different username or whatever. And honestly, you have Twitter and you have Facebook and you have all these different social media sites not really owning up to it, not owning up to the job that they need to do. They've actually said that Twitter, I forget Jack's last name, the CEO of Twitter, has said that basically he's leaving up the fact checking and kind of the cleanup up to journalists. to do, which I mean, it's just which was unbelievable. Most journalists are like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I think we kind of have enough to do these days. But especially considering we can't stop someone from spreading fake news or spreading threats or spreading lies about people continually. But I believe the Boston Globe person actually was directly inspired by Trump, which is part of the.
Well, haven't we all?
Well, no, I mean, but there's the guy. You had the guy in Baltimore with was it Capital City Times? I forget the
Annapolis.
Annapolis. Sorry.
That's fine.
And he was not. He had his own reasons, and just as a journalist in general, like I've gotten threats for my work going back to the Bush administration. Like, it's not necessarily par for the course, but to have a president that now is backing the threats,
that's
it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And people sometimes quoting the president and calling you fake news and kind of building into that. And then even in Germany now, and also, I mean, you go onto the white supremacist social media network. Basically it's not directly that, but it's called Gab. It's basically Twitter meets Facebook, but it's where the white supremacists hang out. And they'll be using things like using words like hashtag Lügenpressen or Presse. I forget how it's pronounced or whatever. But basically, it's the word that Hitler used as fake news. And so, like, this is all kind of building. I mean, it came. I think that people think that it came to a head in Charlottesville, but I don't think it's anywhere near close to it. I mean, I covered dozens. I don't know. It feels like maybe at least 20 different Trump rallies and Trump appearances. And every single one of them, there's a certain point in his speech about 3/4 way through where basically he tells everybody in the audience to turn around and scream expletives and scream things at the members of the media who, while the man holding up the hand to block the lens of one of the I think pool photographers is a big problem, and that's kind of par for the course. I've had that happen, not by Trump people usually it's just by like people in the audience. But what the problem is that Trump keeps us in a cage. If you go cover a Trump event, whether it be the NRA and this is before he was president too, so it's not like a Secret Service thing. He keeps you in a cage. Usually about, if you know the video lingo, like 100 feet throw. So like, 100 feet away from the stage. So like my 7200 gets, if I'm lucky, a head to toe image crop of the president or anyone who's speaking on stage. So it's super far away.
I'm glad we have another word for away.
Yeah,
I'm glad we have a longer word for away.
I was like, oh yeah. Of course, we need extra words. Every different business. That's the fun thing about transitioning from being a photographer to a videographer. It's like, wait, we all have different words for everything. But anyway, he keeps us in a cage with only one door out. And so basically, when you have 15,000 people turn around and start screaming at you, sometimes death threats, sometimes things, whatever, like horrible things. It gets a little edgy because there's like 50 of us usually in this pen, and we can't get out because the exit's guarded by Secret Service usually, one dude maybe. And the one of the events that I was at, the Secret Service grabbed Christopher Morris.
Oh yeah, Christopher Morris,
and threw him on a table. We're even the people that. Actually, no, I'm sorry. That was in Secret Service. I don't believe that was a private. I think it was a Trump security person. Yeah. That's Secret Service for me has always been very professional. They've at least never grabbed me by the throat on a table. I can't say that. And their dogs are very nice. But it's that's the way that covering Trump is basically at this point. You're
sounds lucky. Sounds like Orwell's 2-Minute Hate.
Yeah. I mean, not to keep going on, but I mean, on Evan Vucci is the one who took the photo. Fantastic AP photographer. I don't know a single person who doesn't respect him. Super nice guy. Super straight in his news coverage.
Evan, if you're listening, you're welcome on the show.
I love that. I actually have not asked Evan yet. I should ask him. He covers Trump, so his time is probably like, who the hell knows when you're going to be able to do it. Trump loves doing Monday night rallies too. That's always the problem, but as well. But if you go into his feed, there's a bunch of people going, well, I don't know how this is true. I don't know what to believe. I don't know. Is this really a Trump volunteer? How do we know that? And I know that because the Trump volunteer who has the hand up is wearing a gold pin, and that gold pin means he's within the Trump circle. It's the level of circle. You have these little folded pins that you can wear, and that you get handed. I got handed one when I covered Biden when he was still president, and you get when you're it depends. It tells Secret Service what level of security you have. And I kept going, that's what that means. It means he's at least a Trump volunteer, if not a Trump staffer. I don't know, because it doesn't necessarily always define it. And the guy was still like, well, I don't know how we know anything. And then somebody sent him, I don't know. It's like, literally, I don't know how we can trust anything. And I'm like, I don't know what else to tell you, man, because I know this for a fact because I personally covered it. I don't have a website on Fox News that has the different pinned meetings. Sorry, I don't know. I don't know how else to tell you. Prove facts. And then eventually, I think somebody sent him the fact that Fox News or somebody reported it this way, and he was like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess that's still ridiculous, though." And it was like 20 minutes of going, "Wait, first off, why am I spending my time arguing?"
Well, there's another question, right?
Well, it's 2:00 in the morning, and you have a couple, and you got to fix the internet.
Yeah, I know how it is, man. You get sucked into those comment section. I did that
Anyone who
on
follows
my
me
article.
on Twitter knows that I spend 80% of my time trying to fix the internet. So,
and the thing is, you're making a difference. You're definitely fixing
the
internet.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for your help.
Chipping away at the iceberg.
I'm just a little bit further, Zach, and I think it'll be fixed. The only experience I've ever had with somebody trying to get in my face while trying to take photos was I was in New York City trying to get some photos of Justin Timberlake, and his bodyguard threatened me, came up to me and was going to rip my camera out of my hands, but he didn't. But he threatened. You know what I'm saying? If I took one more photo. So he was a big, tall guy. And
you're actually lucky. That dude is well known for beating the hell out of photographers too.
Really?
That guy is quite aggressive.
I would love it if he did that, because then
I know, totally. I feel like, go for it, man.
Man, bring on a lawsuit.
The only way to make money in photojournalism anymore: get beat up, sue Justin Timberlake.
That and copyright infringement, the only two ways to actually make money.
Well, I think they handled the situation well. They handled it quickly, and they took, the troublemaker off the road. Hopefully, he doesn't do it again. I mean, I don't know what he was trying to necessarily prevent, because there was...
I don't think he was trying to block the photo. I think you guys got it wrong. I think he always goes like this.
It could have been something... Honestly, I could see in the heat of the moment, maybe he's just trying to, the guy is right on top of him, trying to get the photo. And maybe, there could have been his excuse, could have been, I was just trying to keep the guy away. He was on top of me. But still,
I will say that this isn't a Trump thing necessarily, just a Trump thing. I've either covered.
I don't think it has anything to do with Trump. Yep.
No, I think it builds to the Trump. It builds within the Trump world. If it was a different candidate, if it was Marco Rubio, I wouldn't say that it's a candidate thing. I mean, Marco Rubio's terrible, but he's not specifically horrible to the press the way that the president is.
Yeah.
Speaks about him in general. And also, but I think that if you're a volunteer, for a person, you usually get the vibe off of them. You know what I mean? You cover Hillary Clinton, they're a certain way. You cover Bernie Sanders, they're different than the way the Clinton people are. They're more friendly to the press. But I'm saying I've worked as a organizer before within the activism world, and I've had to have conversations with people who volunteers who try to go a step beyond and do something like this before. So it's not just a Trump thing. It happens at many different rallies and the different things I've covered, where if they don't want you to photograph something they were trying to photograph protesters who were there. And I will tell you, the Trump organizers at every rally I've ever been to do their damnedest to make sure, the same way that police officers do, that if that the members of the media do not get photos of the person being arrested or hauled off or whatever.
Right.
And they're often overly aggressive with it. But I mean, it's, when it's Trump, it's not surprising. That's the problem.
Didn't you say when you ran and did a DNC convention, that was worse than the Republican National Convention from a coverage standpoint?
I mean, that was the DNC was on every level an organizational disaster. The space issues, the number of people they left on the floor, the number of press that they didn't, and the idea they would prevent us from stopping and taking a photo anywhere. Literally, there was nowhere on the floor that I had to take most of the photos that I took at the DNC moving. And I had a 500 millimeter f4.
Wow.
from Nikon,
Nice.
and so that one tested every one bit of my talents. And also sometimes you just had to be like, go ahead and do something to me. I need to take this photo, and you take your photos and then move on. I mean, that just like it really like. I usually have a 0 to 11 that I go to. I had to like slow that down. Otherwise, I probably started swinging at people.
That's a heavy weapon, that 500 millimeter.
Well,
lens.
I wouldn't swing the lens. I don't have money to replace the Nikon Professional Services lens. And I also would like them to let me borrow things again. So.
Yeah. So as bad as this is, at least they're not killing journalists or photojournalists, as they are in Afghanistan. It was just recently reported here from the Columbia Journalism Review that on April 30th, a suicide bomb killed 9 reporters and photographers. So that's pretty serious stuff. And I brought this up, to kind of get your all take on Afghanistan as a country with regard to trying to make journalism and photojournalism work. We talk obviously about the Trump supporter who locks a camera, or the white nationalist who is aggressive and trying to throw beat a stick at the photojournalist. But obviously here in Afghanistan they're killing people left and right, and it's a problem ever since really 2001. And so I just want to get a take from you guys. Do you think that there's any hope in Afghanistan? Am I being overly pessimistic in saying that it's probably a lost cause, or do you think there's always hope? And it's just you just got to work on it. Keep at it. Ron, you were in the military. You go first.
There you go. I was in the military. I'm qualified to talk about Afghanistan. I've never been there.
I've never been there either.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, it's a bad place.
What?
Well,
am I just now
going out on
this?
a limb here?
Breaking news, guys. Afghanistan is not safe for people. Breaking news.
I'm surprised that they even try. I mean, these guys are really hardcore photojournalists to want to even try. Hats off, and if they can make it over here, give them a job.
Well, that's the thing. They want to stay over in Afghanistan, I think, and cover the story over there. I mean, although I'm sure they would be happy to go to a place where they may not get killed. I would give them 100% credit. They're doing things, that I think, that's, you can't. It's tough. It's tough. I totally have full respect for them. But it's tough. I mean, what would you do? Let's say in this country, again, hypothetical here.
You send me to Afghanistan and say, "Here's your camera, go shoot people." Oh, good luck. I think I would get Zach's 500 millimeter lens and do it from behind the cupboard or something. Boy, that's a scary proposition.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just bombings; it's beatings, shootings, murders, harassment in general. Dave or Zach, any take on this?
Well, my big take is not directly related to it, is much that, and I almost don't want to go back to the conversation of Trump because there are many more other things out there. But unfortunately, the media environment is that sucks all the oxygen out of the question of photojournalists and journalists in general. By the way, because it was 9 reporters, I believe, 9 reporters and photographers, right? So it's not photojournalists, right? Also, do any of the 3 of you know who Shahidul Alam is? Bangladeshi photojournalist who was recently imprisoned by his government. And he's a mentor to my wife, and I've taught workshops with him and for him for many years in Bangladesh. He's really sort of the grand old man of Bangladeshi photojournalism in a great way. And one of the issues is that things like that just get 2 things, I think, related to the current political climate. One is a lot of right-wing dictators and people like that feel more emboldened in this climate because there's a right-wing climate here where people are feeling uncomfortable and living in fear, be it Philippines, Turkey, Bangladesh, which I know isn't on a lot of people's radar, but it is because of my connection there, my wife's connection there. But the same thing in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a big story. And in another climate, under Obama, under Bush, either Bush, we would have been discussing these things. And so that to me is in some way as distressing. I mean, I feel terrible for them, no question, but it's more terrible if you're going out and you're doing this work and you're risking your life and then nothing's happening with it.
Right.
That would be I'm not going to give them any consolation, but that's sort of my take on it. Like I just got back, as I said, from a month in India, and Modi, who's also a bit of a right winger, is feeling more emboldened by the Trumps and the Turkish guy and Duterte in the Philippines. I mean, there's this whole revival of people on the right thinking, well, let's see how much we can get away with. Mm-hmm. And the State Department is not pushing back, for example. The ambassadors in India are not pushing back because they're either Trump employees or if they're civil servants, they're terrified of, coming down on the wrong end of something on Fox News. And so all of this stuff just, it doesn't register. It gets lost and what's going on in Washington is worth following because it's some pretty amazing news as of late, but still. So that's my take, which is not directly related to Afghanistan, but it's related to the bandwidth issue that people have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about, is your work dying for? Is it making a difference? And to that, I would ask you guys, what was the last time you read a story about Afghanistan? That wasn't the one that I picked for this week's, topic. You know what I'm saying? So I really hope that what they're doing is making a difference. I mean, obviously, I'd rather them do that and do it something rather than nothing. Because if nobody's doing anything, then it's just going to go back to the way it was. I think if it's left on.
Yeah, the problem that can be the part of this that on the journalist end of thing, because obviously there's the military aspect of it, there's the foreign diplomacy aspect of it, and then there's kind of the journalist side of it. Obviously they're all intermingled, but the journalist side of it is we've continually had this problem where I don't know what the case is for this, but like in Syria, you have a couple publications decided to stop covering or stop taking photos from Syrian journalists at all. Because it was having people put too much, or it wasn't Syrian journalists, from freelancers that would go to there because it was getting people to put their lives too much at risk. But then the flip side of it is as well. There's a couple wires that were paying like $75 day rates to local photojournalists who are covering the story in Syria. Wow. And which, $75 in Syria is probably a tremendous amount of money, but
not with your life.
It's not to the level that these men and women were doing. It's not anything, and obviously most of the people that are covering that story there obviously aren't doing it for the money or the fame or the anything, because a lot of times they use fake names because they want to live the next day and they don't want to be targeted by Assad or by ISIS or by any of the 75,000 other groups that are out there. But you have the same problem in Afghanistan. I'm highly doubtful, and please, if somebody knows, correct me if I'm wrong, that the wire services that are buying these people's photos and that are published in whether it be CJR or Reuters or wherever else, whether these guys are actually making a proper living for the amount of risk that they're putting in. Not that whether there's a scale that you can put that on, but it's terrifying that that a lot of these guys don't even have the support there or even to get out. I mean, we have stories about New York Times, permalancers, a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalists who get injured in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the public has to shame the New York Times into actually paying the guy's medical medical thing. And they've since did it, but it's like that story is not a thing. I mean, I can't count the number of times that friends of mine have told me, it's like, oh yeah, this publication's super interested in my stuff, but they won't contract me because they'll look at it on spec because they don't want to be responsible if something happens to me. And like, how does journalism continue if not only are you relying, especially in America, say American news outlets, how does journalism continue if you're only relying on essentially almost volunteer photojournalists? And a lot of these, in Syria, for example, like they're just aid organizations that are sending them. They're whether or not how biased you want to say they are, like the white helmets and things like that. Like, I believe that they're dead on. I know a lot of human rights lawyers and people that work on the scene that trust them not only with their lives but like with truth. But journalism takes a different step. Like, you have to go, okay, well, there's a perspective obviously these people having, and if we don't have our own contracted, reliable journalists on the scene who have had some level of training, that's a problem. But
it is to us three. It's not to the editors, obviously. But I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So I just, in terms of your question about Afghanistan, I mean, it's a good question, Dave. I can't think per se of the last thing that I read directly related to Afghanistan, but I did just send, I believe through the chat, a link to a movie. Have any of you seen this movie called Islands? Did it come to Island Soldier?
Never heard of it.
Movie?
Oh, I've heard of it. I've been actually trying to get the guy to come on the show. So
yeah, Dave, do you have a connection?
Get Nathan to come on the show?
Yeah, Dave, can you hook us up?
Yeah, I actually should follow up on it because I think the last time I talked to him, it was like the film's done, but not done. You know, it's not out. And then thank you for reminding me because it occasionally pops up in my social media feed and I just forget sometimes to ask him to follow through and get him on the show. So
yeah, I'll introduce you guys because I think he'd be good. He's not a journalist by training, but if you don't know the story, but basically the U.S. military gets more on the ground soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan from Micronesia than anywhere else per capita.
Wow.
From the South Pacific, and it's actually by a friend of mine, former intern of mine, who was a Peace Corps volunteer many years ago in Micronesia, and then he just kept following it, and then it turned into a still story, and then it turned into a film, and he got a bunch of grants along the way, and he's now turned into a real film that's won a whole bunch of awards. He's actually touring right now, doing film festivals and showing in South Pacific, and also did some shows in D.C.
Wow.
I think pre-Trump his shows were in D.C. because I don't imagine anybody in the and the connection is that it is about these young, and it's all young men, Micronesians and South Pacific Islanders dying in Iraq and Afghanistan. And in the current political climate, I don't think it's a point of much discussion. But to me, the whole thing, both about this article that you're talking about, is that we're technically still at war over there. I mean, there's a war going on there. Whatever you want to call it, there's something going on. And it's not something that people in the general public are paying much attention to other than parting with treasure and sometimes their sons, but mostly sons from the South Pacific, which is a whole other distressing thing. So I would encourage you to see the movie, and I will I'm just making a note to hook you guys up because I think Nathan would be good and get the movie in front of the new audience as well. So that's the only thing. But your question still, David, was well put. I mean, I actually haven't seen much about Afghanistan other than some stuff related to Nathan's film.
Yeah, it's a tough place out there. I was thinking, if this were happening in the United States, obviously it'd be a whole different type of world. But, would we, Zach, you're probably the most working photojournalist of us all here. If people were getting, car bombed and, dying and stuff like that, America had turned into this sort of, Afghanistan post-apocalyptic whatever. Would you continue to do your job as a photojournalist? Would you say, this is what I got to do. I got to do what I got to do, no matter what. It doesn't matter the danger. Or would you pick some other job? Just curious.
No. I mean, I certainly would. I mean, that's the sort of thing. I've said this a million times. That's kind of the reason why I got into photojournalism is to cover this sort of thing. I never knew that basically I'd end up covering as I. Jokingly, not a comparison directly, obviously, but cover conflict journalism in the United States. I never knew that was a thing.
Yeah.
When I started, 1999 is when I was a freshman in college, thinking about what I was doing, wanted to do in my with my life, and that wasn't a thing. I mean, that was the 2000 election was adorable when you consider the 2016 election on its harshness. I mean,
Right.
But I definitely would. I mean, I'm slowly trying to build, not only physically get in shape, but also trying to build start covering some things internationally. I mean, hell, even southern parts of Germany are turning into war zones when it comes to the white supremacists and the literal Nazis attacking people on the streets. And there's reports one small town was actually taken over for several days by a Nazi group. I mean, so this stuff's coming to our borders, not obviously, again, not Afghanistan level, but I mean, it's, we had a murder happen in Charlottesville. That stuff happens more often than a lot of people in the news report. Car driving, terrorist attacks, on protest organizations and things like that. So, I mean, it's not there's a reason why I have a ballistic helmet and a bulletproof vest in the trunk of my car whenever I go to cover a lot of these things. So, yeah.
Zach, have you seen Black Klansman?
I haven't yet. A lot of my friends' footage make up the end of it.
Right. That was my question. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking for you and a lot of other people I know, and it's going by on the screen really fast, so I didn't really get to see anything. But it is quite effective how it's used, and I was emailing with Dave before tonight to figure out. I'm not sure kind of what to say or think, except that it was a very powerful way of bringing a movie which is ostensibly set in the 70s, I believe, to today.
I'm surprised they didn't approach you, Zach, about using your photo. I mean, it gained so much traction. It was so iconic.
I think they were. I haven't seen the film yet. And there's a lot of talk amongst. It's tough amongst survivors of Charlottesville. I wasn't at the car attack. I was there like 10 minutes after, and a lot of people are very angry with Spike Lee about using the footage the way he did and using it in a film that not only didn't necessarily have directly to do with Charlottesville, but also portrayed a black police officer as a hero. Who this also Boots Riley, who came out with a fantastic film this year as well. Sorry to bother you.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
He wrote a critique about it, to an extent, but basically, long and short of a lot of it is the fact that this officer that's portrayed as a hero in the film has sent many members of the 1970s kind of protest movement to jail, a lot under questionable pretenses. So the fact that on the back end of that film, all the Charlottesville footage was used, and the reason why Charlottesville happened was the police officers not doing anything, and so I'm torn on it. I'm happy to an extent that my footage wasn't used for that reason, because then I kind of get to be a nonpartisan person in this discussion. But I mean, also my understanding is they used a little bit of trickery on buying some of the footage from people. But that's a whole different story.
What I heard about it was that there's a major plot point involving a Jewish. I can't remember but it's not, the guy wasn't Jewish. And then another plot point where there's a horrible atrocity in the movie that was also not happen. It was it was made up to make the movie better.
He doesn't say. He says not to go after Spike Lee over that's a whole different. That's kind of like inside baseball discussion. But he's very clear, I think, in the film that it's not 100% true.
Right.
That what he does in the film. I think he's pretty clear on that. And I wouldn't want to drag him for that. For some of the other things, I'm not so sure.
I think I'm the only one who's actually seen the film.
Yeah.
Right. So the one thing I would say, sort of to throw in there, is that the really fascinating thing about the film is that at the end, when you see the Charlottesville film, it's almost all it's doing is sealing the deal, because of course there's the story of this black cop who does this, and I don't know about that other thing.
Yeah.
But along the way, what you're being told indirectly, including by white people, is no, this isn't going to be fixed. And there's actually one scene where a white cop tells the black guy, we're going to elect somebody someday who's going to believe this shit.
Yeah.
And the black guy says, no, we Americans would never do that. And of course he's talking about Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And so all of those, I liked most of that building. And Spike Lee, I think like any filmmaker, aspires to make a mainstream film that happens to be about these issues. But as a good piece of, as a film with building up and a lot of those elements, I actually thought it worked quite well. I thought it was a little slow. I mean, now that I'm doing my own films, not that I'm such a brilliant editor, but I look at any film that's 2 hours and 10 minutes and say, that would have been brilliant in 1 hour and 3/4.
Yeah. No, I know.
Kind of like the show. Show would be a lot better if it was shorter, right?
Maybe.
So anyway, speaking of war, we are entering the mirrorless wars.
There you go.
Canon has unofficially thrown in
the segue ever.
Yeah.
I got to get
about as smooth as the American troop removal out of Iraq after. Anyway.
Anywho, man, that was almost a rant there, Zach. We got to keep you under control sometimes. But anyways, unofficially, a lot of information is leaked about the new Canon camera. And I initially wasn't going to talk about this because the initial leak was very sort of sparse. It was just like, yeah, here's an image of the camera and here's a few shots. And I was like, there's really not much to talk about. Let's just wait till the official release. And then the entire spec sheet for what the camera can do got released. And I was like, well, okay, there's a little bit more meat for us to talk about and grab onto. And I actually did a write-up about my impressions of the Canon camera compared to the Nikon and other cameras in its category, which you can read on AroundTheLens.com. And I haven't really promoted it much until now, just because, again, this is all pre-release, stuff. I mean, we could come out, on September 5th, Canon come out with like 4 different bodies and have, shoot 4K 60 and have 3 card slots and a whole bunch of other things that people want. And it's just, we only know about this one camera, I mean, again, Nikon had 2 cameras. I mean, I don't know if Canon is just going to go with the one, or maybe they'll come out with another one. We'll still have to see to find out. But let's talk about what we know about this camera so far. And I'll throw my inputs on there. I was kind of surprised because initially I was thinking like myself, wow, Canon's going to do it. Canon's going to, hit those milestones, hit those peaks. And then I read the full specifications and they're like 4K 30. Okay, got it. Full frame. It just can't do it. Hey, I just have to accept that. And then it was like 1080 at 60. Oh, come on, Canon. I have to slum it down to 720p to get 120 frames per second? Ah, you're killing me, Canon. And then they announced, then they said, oh, there's only 1 card slot. And I was like, okay, I don't really care. I mean, I can live with 1. I know many pros want 2. I'm indifferent towards it. You guys can give me your comments in a minute. But then they were like, it's going to be a UHS 1 SD card slot. And I'm like, yes, SD card. Wait, UHS 1 only? UHS 2 is a thing, and it's like, if you're capturing anything at a high bit rate, you need that high speed, and to not have that as an option, I think, was a mistake on their part. Lens selection, again, this is me going point by point with what I talked about with the Nikon camera. They have a kit lens, which is a 24 to 105. They have a 24 to 70 f2, which I think is really interesting from just a user standpoint.
Yeah.
I've never used a zoom that was that shallow and fast.
Yeah.
And then they got a 15 and 35 millimeter, and it's like, I get it. And then they have a bunch of adapters so you can use all your lenses, and I get it. I wasn't really happy when Nikon didn't do it, and I really wish there was wide and zoom telephoto just to show the full feature set of the camera. But I know why they're doing it. They're picking the most popular lenses that they're going to sell, and then they'll trickle out the rest. So, I'm disappointed, but I hold it against them as much as I hold it against Nikon. It's kind of a wash, a moot point. And then memory card. Oh, my OnePlus, I'll give it to the Canon. The flippy screen. I get the flippy monitor. Thank you, Canon. Yeah. At the end of the day, if I were still a 5D Mark II user, I would highly consider this camera, but I don't know. I'm kind of. It's got the 4K 30, which again, if I had never jumped to Micro Four Thirds, I never would have experienced the 4K 60 promised land. So I wouldn't know the difference, and probably would switch over to this. But what are you guys' thoughts on it? I've spoken enough. Let's go to you, Dave. What are your thoughts on this and Nikon's equipment and everything? Mirrorless space. Since you're a videographer now.
Well, I've been mirrorless for almost 10 years. So I am of the it's too late group.
Okay.
I mean, I was stunned at the price point and the size of that thing for the Nikon. I haven't seen anything in the Canon. I haven't read that information.
Yeah.
But it's aimed very successfully, I think, at the people who own a lot of Nikon equipment, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
Except that the whole point behind mirrorless is to be smaller and easier to use and cost less.
Yeah.
And so for somebody like me, it's not even a point of discussion, because for the amount of money they're charging me for the body, I can get a whole hell of a lot more with Micro Four Thirds, or even a decent amount of stuff with the Sony. So
right.
If I was a Nikon loyalist, it might be a conversation to have. But for somebody starting scratch,
yeah,
it's late, and I'd be curious to see how they do 5 years from now. Yeah. Ron looks like he's ready to chime in there.
Yeah, no, I disagree about the mirrorless being better because it's smaller. I would like a full-sized camera without a mirror, just because the mirror gets in the way. I can get a lot faster shooting without a mirror. For that benefit, that's what I like mirrorless about. That's the thing I like about mirrorless. More frames per second.
Well, I love the full frame aspect of the mirrorless, and I would love to upgrade from my Micro Four Thirds because as Zach routinely likes to show me with his show and tell, the size of the sensors are it's like this different.
Yeah,
and it's like I get that, totally understand. I wish I had a larger sensor. It picks up more light. You can use it in more low light situations. You get that great depth of field. I'd love to have the full frame sensor, but until they get to a point where they can give me the functions and features I get out of my Micro Four Thirds camera, I can't see myself ever upgrading. But then again, I posit this sort of argument, which is perhaps I shouldn't think of it as a here or there, all or nothing type argument. Perhaps I should consider it as like I've got my Micro Four Thirds for what it can do, I've got my full frame for what it can do, and I just use the tool I need for the job I'm trying to do.
Except for the economics of owning two sets. Other than that,
why have so many tools?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's what you want to do. Yeah, I'd love to have one camera that does it all, but again, if you can't get there and you're still, if you're a videographer trying to get certain things, certain shots, I mean, you got to buy the tools you need. You got to, I've got a drone for aerial shots. I've got a full frame for low light. I've got my Micro Four Thirds for general video use. I've got my cell phone for whatever. I've got, these are all tools that we use. So maybe not getting a full and complete kit, but maybe a mirrorless full frame body with a, 50 millimeter or 24 to 70 or whatever, or maybe like 24 to 200, something general, just for whatever. Again, it depends on what you need to do out of it. I mean, I don't think, Dave, you're shooting too much. What do you shoot at, 60 or 30 frames per
30
second?
and 60. Okay. I don't shoot anything faster than that. And I have a lot of prime lenses, so if I have low light issues, I'll just pull out a prime.
Yeah.
The big thing for me, and I don't know this about the Nikon, but the Olympuses are very, very well done, internally stabilized. So I'm able to do a lot of stuff and not get camera shake. Is the Nikon internally stabilized?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yep. I don't know about the Canon.
My understanding is I think it's at least on the level of the latest Sony.
Right.
When it comes to stabilization, I could be talking out of my butt here, but that's my remembrance on when I was reading everything, when I was seeing it. But yeah.
What about you, Zach? Are you going to switch over to Canon with this new Canon mirrorless?
I mean, surprisingly, no, I mean, not surprisingly. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised. No, but I'm actually surprised. The company that has the really fantastic C series of video cameras and basically still shoot. I mean, they shoot stills and they shoot pretty good stills,
right.
And they have 4K, great 4K built in.
Yeah.
And I get that you can't. I get it's whether it be a size thing or processor or heat thing, whatever. I don't know what the technicals are. We're gonna have to figure that out. We're gonna have to have some like
right in the technicals,
some actual technical person to come in and go, okay, well here's why we can't put the C 200 300 in a DSLR body. Like this is why this happens.
Just read the comments on the article I posted about Nikon on Petapixel. They'll explain it to you better than I can.
Yeah, I totally trust the comments on Petapixel for anything other than,
Actually, there's a great video by Max Urev on YouTube that breaks down why, like for instance, my new Note 9, which I have yet to receive, I'm still waiting on, can shoot 4K 60, right? So my thinking is, why is it my cell phone can shoot 4K 60, my GH5 can, but my big full frame, this big full frame can, and it's just, that's the wrong way to think about it, and that's what I learned.
First off, I saw somewhere that people are assuming, or at least thinking, that there's going to be another body as well, like the way that the Nikon.
They said there's going to be another one.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, this R may be just the one, and then there's a R100 and an R2 or whatever that comes out. So this is me weirdly defending Canon because this, like looking at the specs, I'm incredibly what? Like really? Like, I mean, just looking at the ISO levels, like without expanding, looking at like any number of things, not even the lens mounts and things like. I do love what they're doing with their adapters. I wish I could see Nikon do something like that right out of the bat. That would have been pretty cool. But I think again that comes from Nikon being still first, video second, and Canon is at least starting to see the light of video first, still second. Because again, the C100, the C series is just such a huge thing with them. But in general, like looking at the specs, I'm just incredibly unimpressed. But I mean, again, I'm not I'm 100% not in the market for this camera. Like, there's no world where I'm switching from Nikon to go to a different body unless it's completely giving up on Nikon and going to Sony, which the Nikon Z series is just good enough that I'm happy to switch. I'm happy to at least get a body for a Z6 or something like that. But I do love the 28 to 70 f2 lens wrap. I would love to have that on my. I'd love to have. I mean, if there is a Canon, if there's a Canon mirrorless to Nikon mirrorless body adapter, I'm all in for that. That extra 8. No, I mean, like, you think about, like, just for standard photojournalism work, like, especially the type of work I do, that extra stop. Oh my God. Like, when I switched, I remember when I switched, went from a 50 millimeter 1.8, just the cheap good one. It's a good one, but on the Nikon camera body, at least, to the 35 1.4. And it was like, oh my God. It went from 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it went from 10 o'clock in the evening to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was like, what the hell's going on? Like, I didn't know that one stop would do that. Yeah. Magic. So, I mean, that's cool. I don't know what the hell the AF point maximum 5,655 is. Am I misunderstanding that? Like, that there's that many AF points? I mean, I just feel like that's almost every pixel. Yeah.
I mean, I know they have lots of coverage, and they have that dual pixel AI or whatever.
Yeah,
which is very popular.
I mean, I can't imagine going pixel.
Hey, how about price, guys? What do you think about the price?
Where am I missing the price here?
Well, they haven't leaked. The price hasn't leaked. That's why we were not talking about price.
It's gonna be? I say we're talking 3,500.
What?
No.
You're out of your mind. It's a 30 megapixel mirrorless. If they don't come in at least.
How much is the 5D Mark IV?
If they don't come in at 2,000, no one's, they're going to basically be laughing stock of the mirrorless world.
But how much is the Nikon?
The Nikon starts at $2K for the N6, and then N7 is $3,400.
$3,400. Basically, it's the same price, almost the same price as the D850, which it's a comparable camera.
I mean, they can make an argument of coming like in between those two, like because it does have.
Okay, my mistake. Sensor, I recall it was 30. Maybe the kit was 3,500 when it came out. I see it now. Now it's for like more like 25, like that. There's for the 5D Mark IV. So right. I'm saying similar price to the Mark IV then. So I think not 2,000. I think 25 though.
I could believe 2,500, but it's still like, I mean, you're coming out with a camera that's less capable than your competition at more cost.
Really stopped them before.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Canon though is usually the one that kicks Nikon's butt on price points though. I mean, if you look, especially on the for me, it really depends on whether they're saying that this is their either consumer or prosumer camera, which I have to believe it is.
Yeah, it's got a flippy screen, gotta be.
Well, yeah, I mean, not
really.
only because of that, but
that's the way
any
Canon
number
does
of points. So I believe that they'd have to come in at 1,700,
wow.
And then maybe with a kit lens or whatever, at a little bit higher. I mean, they have to beat Nikon on it. I mean, unless, of course, they're just literally both of them are just deciding they're living in their own worlds. Because, again, the thing is, I mean, how many people are switching? Like, I have a really hard time believing that people are going, I'm going to sell my system and move to this. And if it's a choice of anything, if I'm selling my system, whether I'm Canon or Nikon, I'm going to Sony because they got all the lenses and all the specs are the same. Like, I can buy a used version of whatever the last best model is. And I mean, that's how I always buy my cameras. It's always the used version or whatever. Like I'll get the D850 in about 6 months. But like, so I think that they're both going for their own worlds. My only worry though, is since this is for me, this is like such a low ball, like spec wise, is that they're worried about eating into their C100 C series cameras.
Oh, they're always worried about that.
But that's a big thing for Canon because those cameras are everything in the especially in the photojournalism end of video. I mean, like you go to any Trump rally or whatever, I would say if it's not a network news camera, it's a C100, C300, C whatever camera. There ain't nothing else out there. And I don't know I don't know if they will come out with something that, because they have to worry about, if it comes out at $2,000, was it $2,300 is the C100 camera. So that's going to eat out the low end of their C series cameras. Like that just makes me question things. Obviously, this is all speculation, and I hate speculation when it comes to this stuff, especially when it's not Nikon.
Speculate on the specs. Yeah, I mean, again, what's talking about price, if they price it too high, if they price it over, $2,500 or higher, it's just gonna people maybe who are Canon devotees will still adopt it, knowing because like I said, if I had all my Canon glass, it'd be an attractive camera system. But from people who are coming in from scratch, and looking at all the competition, just laying out their options, Sony has a very compelling argument, and I'd say even Nikon has a very compelling argument, and I would choose Nikon over Canon if this were the case, even though I love that flippy screen. I could, again, when you're talking about capability, I'd rather have the camera have more capability than necessarily options. Again, I'll figure out a way. I was actually looking at these Ninja monitor things that they come out with. Yeah. They're pretty interesting stuff. Atomos, yeah. I've never really had one of those before, so maybe I'd go that route. I don't know.
Because that's also an interesting thing on whether, because we know what the Nikon HDMI out, like the RAW is.
Right.
Is that in the specs here? I just haven't.
They have not talked about that. If it was there, I didn't see it, but no, there's been no talk of
that'll be out. Anyone doing a pro video in general, I would assume, has some sort of rig, and it's not just this little camera sitting on with a little box or something like that. Like you and I, like Ron and I shoot with, like the little Rode or whatever, I forget what it's called, the little box at the bottom. But so it does become like whether the flippy screen is all that important when you're shooting like more pro level stuff or for jobs and things like that. And also maybe that's where the hidden like specs of the video is, because this is so unimpressive when it comes to the video.
Well, I'm going to throw in a word here for flippy screens and doing it professionally, because I do it professionally. I use a flippy screen, and I also use a measly half frame. So I just wonder about the obviously it's clearly aimed at the Canon, the Nikon existing users for their pool, but those people aren't enough. I mean, all the research will tell you that just in terms of numbers, nothing against the Canon Nikon folks, but it's a bunch of older guys mostly. Some women to some degree, but not much. But
when Are you telling me that the photojournalism world is predominantly male and predominantly white?
Yes.
I would not have known that.
I'm actually talking
and predominantly old.
I'm talking about the not about the photojournalism camera market, but just the camera market in general of landscapes, portraits, anything else. But, the heavy Nikon users, heavy Canon users fit one demographic. Yeah. But neither of those companies can continue to grow just selling to those people. I mean, they have to be selling to the next generation. The next generation, I just think, is going to look at that and say, the Sonys certainly are much better. And I happen to think the Panasonic / Olympus, Fujis, all of them can do a lot of things that 97% of the users need. So I'm very dubious myself, but it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, I would say, again, Nikon and Canon are both doing the basic bare minimum to stem the tide of people leaving for Sony and appease their fan base and appease their user base with these initial cameras. They'll come out with the next versions, a few years from now, that are designed to appeal to the person who's just starting out, because again, they'll have a higher lens selection. Maybe they'll have more features like multiple card slots or whatever versions with multiple card slots. So again, I don't see these overtures or these initial, cameras as being anything other than stopgaps. But we'll see. We'll also see what Panasonic comes out with, because they're going to enter the ring with a full frame. So Zach, you might have a reason to switch over to Panasonic now that they're coming out with full frame.
That's a thing that's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they're going to come out with a Photokina. They're going to come out with a full frame camera.
Cool. So, welcome to 2005? 2006, 2007?
Have they said anything about what lenses they're going to use on that full frame thing?
No idea, but I know they have partnered with Leica in the past for their mounts. So
Okay.
I don't know. We'll find out, and hopefully at Photokina in a few days. But I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see if Panasonic can do something different, because honestly, if they come out with a mirrorless that's just like Nikon and just like Canon and just like Sony, they're going to lose. They're going to get forgotten about, and people are just going to go with one of the big three. So they have to really do something to differentiate, and maybe they'll be the one to come out with 4K 60, or again, maybe they'll do something amazing with video because they're well known for their video. So
yes. Yeah.
But anyways, that's going to end this week's show. I want to thank my guest, Dave Wells, for taking time out. David, is there anything you'd like to plug for us?
Oh, just go to my website, davidhwells.com. You can see the videos. I'm putting a lot of film festival entries out there, winning some small film festival awards. All that stuff's on my site, so send you there.
Great. Ron, you got anything for us?
If anybody wants to come to Hawaii, buy him lunch.
He's got a couch he can sleep on. He's sitting on it right now. Zach, you got anything we should look forward to? Perhaps some old interviews you've done?
I basically have a go to my Facebook page, Zach D. Roberts, and watch me doing the most embarrassing they call them black box interviews usually, sit down interview with an actor from a Netflix TV show. It's hilarious. He has me eat a salmon bagel.
Nice. I won't spoil it.
I promise it's funny.
Just to give you all a couple of heads up, we got a couple of great guests coming on in the next few weeks. Next week, we're going to have Maggie Stieber and Lynn Johnson, who photographed the face transplant surgery that was featured in National Geographic. So we're going to get them to talk about their experience filming that. And then we've got Michael from the company Lucky Sparrows Wedding Photography talking about watermarks. So that should be enlightening. And then finally, coming up on September 24th, we've got Jap. You should probably say this, Zach. How do you pronounce this guy's name?
I've actually never met him in person, so I'm not 100% sure how to. He's I think Eastern European or Central European photojournalist with Nerve Photo and also Xinhao. I always forget how to pronounce that as well.
Right.
But he is one of many of us who is considering getting out of the game because it's just really hard to make it as a freelancer, which I think might build into. Yeah, I know. Shocking if you haven't watched this show before, or if you have. I know it's breaking news, but it's difficult to make it as a freelancer in photojournalism.
Don't you lie to me.
We don't talk about it enough.
We
really just don't talk about it enough on this show.
Yeah, I know, right?
How does Jarecki make his living, by the way?
Who?
The guy who criticized freelancers for taking lowball rates. I know he was a contractor once, I believe, for Time for many years, but I don't think he is anymore. Is he?
I'm not actually incredibly sure. The last we've been tweeting. This is Kenneth Jarecki. He's a photojournalist. He just wrote a piece, "Freelancing Crybabies," on Medium. I've tweeted about it, but I'll post it on the Around the Lens Facebook page as well, and we can kind of discuss if anyone else has any thoughts or anything like that after reading it. But basically, he criticizes kind of younger photojournalists for taking low ball rates, as he calls them. I mean, he supposedly has a conversation. He has a conversation with or text message or something, email conversation with I don't know if it's a photojournalist or just a journalist in Iraq who's considering taking a rate from I think it was NPR for $350 for a story from there, and basically the journalist is like, I have to take this rate. Like, this is money. Like, this is what they're paying me. This is what they've offered. And he's making the argument, don't take the rate at all. And be broke if you have to, and don't get published. I've been trying to figure out, what's the solution? We've been tweeting back and forth. So hopefully Kenneth, if you're listening, you should come on the show. We can do a whole special show. I'd really love to talk about it. Because I'm kind of, I know your work, I respect your work, and I'm trying to figure out what the argument is here to basically say, just don't do work then, or don't publish your work, because unfortunately this is where the industry is for a lot of stories. You can't get $1,000 day rates or $1,000 story rates for like the one-off hit, you know.
That's why I was asking how he makes his money, because I think that becomes a big part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean he's a contact press photojournalist, and you know, so it might be a lot of residuals and back sort of thing, which, you know, I mean, like I'd be great if I had probably, you know, an old stock and 15 years worth of work, or at least, you know, I make like $2,000 a year on my residuals from my small amount of, you know, work I have done with my wires, but you know, I can't say no to the $250 day rate that, you know, the site that I usually work with pays me. I just can't, like, because no one else is paying me to cover that protest or cover that thing, so at all. Yeah. So, yeah.
Mm. All right. Well, make sure you take your Xanax after watching this show, and call 1-800 helpline. No. Hey, there's still people making money in this field. There's still the one guy. But anyways, that's been our show for this week. I want to thank our guest, David Wells, so much for taking time out to be with us. For Ron Hamilton and Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 140, and we are out!